And we are so glad now to reconnect with law professor and Catholic young adult fiction writer Tony to talk about his second novel, which is called The Haunted Cathedral. Tony, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me back.
And so when we last spoke, we spoke about the first book in the Hardwood Mysteries had just been released, and you hinted about book two. So tell us about The Haunted Cathedral, and in this Holy Week, it may be people's first glimpse via television or online into the diocesan cathedral. What made you choose a cathedral as a setting?
Well, like we said, we talked a few months ago about Shadow in the Dark, which was book one, and introduced, this takes place in 12th century England at a Benedictine abbey is where it begins. And my main character, Zan, as you recall, winds up at the abbey with the monks, and he makes his best friend Lucy. And so book one, he solves this mystery of the shadow. But in book two, Zan and Lucy wind up in faraway Lincoln, England, and they wind up investigating Lincoln Cathedral. Of course, this is in 1185 A.D., 1185 A.D., and it's not the same Lincoln Cathedral that's standing today. But the reason I chose Lincoln Cathedral as the site for the story is because it is historical fiction too, and there was a major event that occurs in that cathedral, ironically during Holy Week in 1185 A.D. And so the book takes place mostly during Lent, partly during Holy Week. It ends on Easter. And a lot of the mystery involves whether there is a ghost haunting this cathedral.
I'm looking forward to flipping through this and learning a bit about your creativity, because I've spent a lot of time in our cathedral here in Boston this Lent and Holy Week. I have to ask you, though, how challenging is it to write young adult fiction with a Catholic theme, and how does that factor into The Haunted Cathedral?
I try to make the themes organic to, the world that they were living in. So, Zan and Lucy are around monks and nuns. They're living in a time when, talking about God and talking about the church was part of everyday life for a lot of people, but especially for the ones that they're in circles with. And so in some ways, it wasn't all that challenging because the environment of the books sort of lends itself to it. But I don't want the books to be preachy. I never wanted them to really be viewed as specifically religious books per se. I wanted them to be really exciting mysteries for tweens and teens and young adults, with some good religious themes. And honestly, those are just themes that, we encounter in our own everyday life, especially for kids. What does God want me to do with my life? And, what is God's plan for me with all the things that life is throwing at me, whether it be shadows or ghosts.
Well, when you write a second book, that means that the first book must have done pretty well. Tell me about the reaction to the first book.
We've gotten a great reaction to the first book. It's already won 2 gold medal awards at the 2020 Moonbeam Children's Book Awards and the Illumination Awards just a few months ago. And there's still a bunch of awards that we're waiting on. So we're very, very pleased with the reception of the books. Loyola Press, the publisher, has done a fantastic job with everything. You can see how beautiful the covers are, from just putting the book together, marketing it, putting it in for the awards. And most importantly, when you hear from the kids or the parents, young adults who are reading it, they all have very positive things to say, and they are looking forward to not just book 2, but there's a book 3 coming out this July called The Fire of Eden. On this little card here, I've got the picture of the cover, and I'm working on book 4, so it's looking good.
Tony, I'm going to get book 1, and I'm going to combine it with this and give it to my 13-year-old niece, Olivia, because she's just a voracious reader. But do you have any hints or questions or little insights that I could offer to her when I hand the books to her?
Well, Loyola actually has put a very helpful how to read historical fiction section in the beginning of each book. There's also, a glossary at the end. And in fact, there are, games and things online. So I would just say, let her have fun with it. And I think she'll enjoy it.
Okay. What's the biggest challenge with when you write a book, Tony? Is it knowing the audience, or is it finishing the story, or what is it?
Sometimes it's just getting started and working through the story the first time. And then the editing process is always grueling. But really, honestly, the marketing of the book, to me, is the hardest part. I so much more enjoy writing it. So.
Well, Tony, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. We'll have you for book 3 and book 4. So you're already pre-booked.
I would love it. And thank you, Bishop Reed. I'm sure Olivia will enjoy it. I'll be glad to sign her a copy if you'd like.
Oh, that'd be great. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure she would as well.
Tony, where can people find a copy of the book and find out more about your work?
Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all those places, of course, Loyola. But frankly, go to your local Catholic bookstore and ask them to stock them. I think we should support our local Catholic bookstores as much as we can, and they should have these books on their shelf, frankly.
Absolutely. Tony, always a pleasure. Stay well, and we'll talk probably around July.
Thank you, and thank you for all the ministry that Catholic TV is doing. I definitely appreciate the masses.
Sure thing. Happy Holy Week. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.